Hello, hello, and welcome to a Tuesday edition of Maximum Growth Live. I am one of your hosts, Jay Ruane, the CEO of FirmFlex Social Media Marketing for Lawyers, as well as the managing partner of Ruane Attorneys, a civil rights and criminal defense firm in Connecticut. But with me down there, I'd say Maryland, but I know it's not Maryland. Maybe South America, maybe the Far East, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're lounging in the Gulf of Oman. I don't know where he is this week, but that guy there is Seth Price, the managing partner of Price Benowitz in Maryland, DC, Virginia, South Carolina, Oman, London, Paris, Rome, Moscow, all those wonderful places, as well as the founder of Blue Shark Digital SEO for law firms. Seth, how are you doing this week?
Doing great. It's very exciting week for the show, and giddy for Thursday.
Yeah, this week is I have been thinking about our Thursday show all weekend, thinking about the questions, I reread E-Myth over the weekend just to sort of brush up on it because, it has been years since I read it because I'm living the in versus on stuff now. And it's really, something that I've come to. But I don't want to jump too far ahead of it. We've got a lot to talk about what's coming up on Thursday with our interview with Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth series. But let's talk about some other stuff that's been on the plate right now. And the first thing I want to talk about is how your firm's doing with LSA versus pay-per-click, because I've got some feedback on how we're doing. How's it going with you guys?
It's interesting because I see it for myself. I see it from our clients. I think that there was the initial pop when if you got on very, very early, there was like an extra couple cases you could get. Great. There's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. But as it develops, it's another pay-per-click platform. And what I've seen, and I've spoken to a lot of industry experts on the SEO side and our digital marketing side, I should say, is that what we're seeing currently is a cannibalization of pay-per-click, and that because all eyes are on LSA, Google's doing everything it can to push it. We're seeing a high volume, but depending on the area, contingency people doing better. But in the fee-for-service area, we're seeing a lot of low-quality leads coming through. So I think it's a tale of two cities. The contingency world doing better many times than people on the fee-for-service side, particularly if you're trying to get a higher dollar client. That seems to be the biggest challenge. There's volume, but is there quality there? And as they start jacking up the price on the calls, which they will do over time as that auction kicks in, I think it's going to be a pretty tight market, particularly outside of the contingency world.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I mean, we're seeing volume. Interesting. We've got a couple of things going. I was talking to a colleague and some of the leads that we've gotten through LSA are not unique to us. And I don't know if that is unique to us in that they just, they called us and then they hung up and then they called somebody else, or if Google supplied that lead to multiple people. Because
it's funny. I have a lot of experience in this space. Let's go back to the Total Attorney days, right? Because they were one of the first ones that started the multi-lead, the lead going to multiple people. And then as they got bought by internet brands and Nolo was an early player with all of the products under internet brands where 3 to 5 people were getting the same lead. Early on, Martindale Hubbell was selling leads, and to fill their pipeline, they did a deal with whatever the multi-lead version was at the time, whether internet brands or not, I can't remember. And they were buying these. So they were selling you a lead for like $90 that they were buying for 40, but you were one of 5. There was a whole class action suit ready to go. I ended up just getting a refund from them for it. But if you're not careful, that every lead source says, oh, well, it's great making X per call, but imagine if I can make 5X per call. Nothing surprises me.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're talking to a couple of colleagues, and a week after those leads have come in, we're sort of sharing data, thinking, okay, it's a week late, the lead is either in our pipeline or unable to be converted, and so now let's go back, look at the leads that you got, look at the leads that we got, when did it come into you, when did it come into us, and starting to measure to see, because the way you approach things, I think, is going to be different if you have a lead yourself or if you're getting one of these pooled leads, because, you know, at that point, it's going to be the first one to pick up the phone and talk to that person. And I think lawyers out there, especially in the PI space, if 5 law firms are getting that PI lead at one time, you know, sometimes it's the first to talk to the client that gets that person signed up, since it's a no money down situation. So you have to think about your intake process and how you're going to go after these leads a little bit differently.
But that's nothing new. That's always been the case, I think. You know, that's. But let me ask you this. So I'm a little confused. So, if it's a phone, these are non-phone call leads. These are form leads. Like, you're saying that the same phone call is going to multiple people.
No, they're getting a phone call to us, but then we're seeing that they're also calling somebody else same day. So, you know, they're dialing, talking to us, then dialing again, going to the next person on the lead, that type of thing. And I'm trying to figure out if it's because they were unhappy with us or why. And, you know, trying to see, okay, if we hung up the phone with them at 1:00 and my colleague is getting that lead at 3:00, you know, where did I miss out on that? I'm sort of trying to use, you know, knowledge to be able to work my conversions a little better, because if they're going back 2 hours later and looking for more information and calling somebody else, that's a lot different than trying 5 days later and calling somebody else. Because obviously, you know, at that point, it might be a financial thing. But if it's 2 hours later, we didn't answer the questions that they had right then and there.
Well, and also, if Google is making money per call, I wonder whether they're doing any hyper retargeting to bring people back. You know, where normally they would have your information, they might come back to you. Again, I'm just hypothesizing.
Well, they do that with AdWords. So they do that with AdWords with session-based searches. So, you know, I could search for DUI lawyer, and they'll give me some DUI lawyers. An hour later, I search for florist, and I'm going to get a DUI lawyer ad. Right. And here's the interesting thing. There's another class action waiting to happen. I didn't bid on Red Roses in Connecticut, but yet my DUI lawyer ad will show for that in session-based retargeting. And so that's a problem, because I don't, you know, now I'm paying a premium for that spot. Now, if it converts, I'd probably be pretty happy about it. But I am sure that, you know, Google is doing that. And here's the next thing I want to talk a little bit about LSA. What do you think of the platform? It is the wonkiest, ugliest. I mean, I think whoever figures out a way to get that data out timely and get it into a prettier dashboard that's more functional is going to be, or I mean, maybe Google should have bought LeadDocket. I mean, you know, because
and look, they'll figure it out. But it's, you know, like, imagine doing this at scale. We're trying it at scale. It's not. It's absurd. And it makes me angry. I mean, again, it's the same as the Google is the GMBs. They could knock out spam if they wanted to. They just don't care. Here, they could easily put something that is more user friendly. And it's frustrating. I think when you look at it, it's a division within Google. You know, they started with locksmiths, and they're like, "Oh, lawyers, let's try to grab some coin here." And at the scale they're doing it, particularly in the legal space, and the cost that we're dealing with, it would be nice if we had the ability to pull data out cleanly.
Yeah, that's a really a big thing. Now, we talked a little bit at the outset about seeing a drop in pay-per-click coming because it's being cannibalized. Have you done anything with your pay-per-click campaigns in response to it? I have some information I can leave, but I'm curious what you guys are doing.
I want to hear your conversation. I'm of mixed minds. I haven't gone as dramatically as you there, because LSAs don't show in every instance. So there's still opportunities there. But what have you seen when you being as draconian as you have, cutting stuff off?
So what I did is I cut everything off, and it's almost like our LSA stopped functioning because our phone calls dried up to almost nothing. And
outside of LSA,
outside of everything, we last week, you know, I think I talked about it last Tuesday that I was going to shut off my pay-per-click. So I did. And last week was our worst week since September. And I don't want to say causation and correlation. Correlation doesn't equal causation here, but it was interesting because then I went back in this past Monday and turned on my pay-per-click again.
And just to be very clear for the audience, this is your Google Ads, what used to be called AdWords, as opposed to the LSA. The LSA was running, but you turned off your pay-per-click as opposed to your pay-per-call with Google.
Right. Right. So that's exactly what it is. So I took my pay per click, my Google AdWords last Tuesday, and said I'm going all in on LSA. Put all my budget into LSA, and shut off my Google pay per click.
Right.
The calls dropped to near nothing. Monday,
Meaning the LSA
LSA didn't perform. LSA didn't perform at all. I mean, we still got some organic stuff because of long tail search terms that we were able to talk to people on the phone and find out how they search us and that type of thing. But then Monday, when we turned back on our pay per click, almost immediately LSA started working again better, and pay per click started generating business. I mean, to the point where the intake team was nervous. They were biting their fingernails, saying, "Hey, everything dropped off for a week," and it just seems that it was coincidence that it basically started the minute I turned off my AdWords, and it came back on the minute I turned my AdWords back on.
Meaning, as if in the old days of lead gen, there was always if there were a number of programs, especially in the PI space, where you would buy, like they'd run a generic TV ad, and you would get every third call. And there was always the fear that somebody was cherry picking the catastrophic cases and taking them out of your 1 out of 3,
Exactly.
or as you did a collective. So what you're theorizing that potentially that if Google knows what's a valuable call and what's not a valuable call, and they're smart enough to probably know that they somehow you are getting calls but not monetizable calls when you.
No, I wasn't getting the calls at all. What I'm saying is that because I didn't have a concurrently running AdWords campaign, because if everybody knows, if you had pay-per-click prior to LSA, your billing account is all one account. So your pay-per-click billing and your LSA billing are one and the same. So if all of a sudden, if I go from spending $15,000 a week in pay-per-click and LSA combined, and then I shut off 5,000 of pay-per-click, right? Now all of a sudden I'm not getting any calls. I'm curious to see if there was any sort of tie there. Now, it could be algorithmic. I don't know if it's necessarily a finger on the scale type of thing, or if them taking the finger off the scale, but it just seemed interesting to me that
because you attempted to basically say, "Hey, I don't want your clicks, I want your calls," and they said, "No. If you're not paying for our clicks, you're not getting your calls." Is what you are seeing.
That's what I'm seeing.
Interesting.
And I don't want to recommend anybody do it because they could have the same negative impact on our revenue like we had last week.
Right. And and with all of these things, it's so hard to isolate, but you've done a pretty good job over the years with Avo back in the day, Avo ads, and cutting those off. So what you're seeing is, for whatever reason, there's a correlation. And while that correlation is there, you're not going to mess with it. It's too important.
Exactly. So pay-per-click's back on. I'm being more aggressive, because I check my pay-per-click once a week for the negatives I should be adding and all that stuff. And I'm just being very hypersensitive to that and making sure that I do my work on that end. And I was up last night actually doing that. It's interesting. Brings up last night. We've talked in the past about the use of VAs and use of people that are outsourced or overseas and that type of thing. And one of the things, and I don't know if the people in the audience know about this, is that you can get your VA through a service like online legal help, get staffed up, Sandy Van. They have some great services, but those are for people who you need to have regularly in your mix and as part of your firm. Last night, it's December 8th. I got to get my holiday cards out. My mailing list is a jumble, and I have a secondary mailing list that I want to hit to talk about this podcast that we're doing with a postcard going out. So I'm here. It's 11 o'clock at night. I just finished looking at my pay-per-click stuff, and I say I got to get this thing formatted, and I'm exhausted and I want to go to bed. So instead of me turning it over to a VA that we have in our office who wouldn't be available till the next morning, instead of me looking on Fiverr for somebody having to vet them, or Upwork and having to vet them and talk to them, that sort of thing, I used a service called Get Magic. And I used it before, sort of forgot about it, found it back again, and I was able to text them the request. Then I emailed them the lists, went to bed, woke up, and my mailing lists are all perfectly formatted. And it comes out to be $35 an hour, which is expensive for virtual help. But for one-off projects where I don't have to vet somebody, I'm paying for the convenience. Get Magic was a great solution for me to get this, project closed. So I'm wondering how I could use Get Magic within my own office to settle and solve small problems without having to bring somebody new into the mix.
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you think that does Get Magic bring people with specific skill sets, or was it just any virtual VA with basic spreadsheet knowledge could do this?
Well, I don't know, because I know they probably outsource it to overseas talent as well.
Right.
I mean, they may have people on staff that have certain needs. Of course, they say they'll do anything, but the question is, since you're paying essentially by the minute for their work, or in chunks, they'll certainly learn something for you if they can bill you for the time to learn it and then do your project. But I used it for pretty simple spreadsheet maintenance, formatting of documents, that type of thing. In the past, scraping data
with Excel or Google Docs experience could have done what you needed.
Right.
It's not.
Exactly.
This was not okay. So, and I guess it brings me to something that I've been sort of playing with. We talk about, there's a lot of talk about what jobs could be done by somebody not in your office, whether it be another part of the United States or another part of the world. And the thing that I have struggled with as, let's call it a legacy firm, a firm that's not, if you started today, you see people doing really cool things with teams overseas, leveraging software, and you're building it with that. But when you have, and I'm not, when I look at my own firm, and a lot of our listeners have firms with established processes out there, one of the things I've been pushing for is what tasks can be broken off. And it's very, very hard, I have found, to get employees to, if I say to them, bring me a list of things that can be done, it's not happening. Maybe it would be part of looking at your wiki, or at your documentation and sort of critically looking at that, not from the point of view of the worker, but from yourself, and asking questions, say, hey, could this chunk be done? But what I've been experimenting with is when I'm assigning tasks, particularly in the marketing side, but elsewhere, is saying, does this type of thing you just dealt with, could this be done overseas? And saying, hey, if it's not time sensitive, this person's at $20 an hour, please send it to our VA, tell them what to do, and let it come back, and then double and triple check it. So I think the Get Magic is a great sort of patchwork in there. But the question is that just a stepping stone to you saying, here's somebody sitting overseas for a nominal single-digit dollars per hour that can take that type of work and do it on call, that, again, you do it once, who cares? But how much stuff is within the Ruane empire that could go out every night if we were disciplined about not doing things ourselves? And you don't want to make more work for yourself. At the same time, it is something that I think that if you don't push from the top, won't happen. It's not somebody's natural inclination. But once you say to somebody, for example, on HR, we had issues that some of the services don't speak to each other, and we might have 100 resumes to download in the morning. And I was like, okay, well, instead of you sitting there at $25 an hour and downloading for 75 minutes, can you please send this to our team overseas and let them just have it downloaded and waiting? And those types of steps, when you look at chunks of time, to me, that is our future. And there are people way ahead of the curve, I would argue, that have started their firms in this world. But for us that are slightly older or slightly clunkier with this, it's forcing the issue that if you don't continue to push it, it just won't happen, and you'll keep maximum expense in-house. And I'm trying very, very hard to be disciplined and asking people to make those pushes.
Yeah, I think, it's always good at the end of any year to sort of go through and start to identify things where you can save money, save time, save steps, and utilizing offshore talent that can do things really overnight is a great way to sort of have your team be able to come in the next morning and hit the ground running.
But at least what I have seen is it's easier said than done. Most things in life are, in the sense that it's not just, that sounds great, right? That could be put on the wall and everybody could know about it. But unless there's a constant sort of push, because it's not the employees, it's not their nature. And at some level, it's not in their best interest, for a bunch of reasons. So that unless you're sitting there and sort of saying, hey, what about this? What about that? I think it has to come from management down. And if it doesn't, it likely won't happen.
Yeah, I think so. So, okay, before we get to talking about a little bit about our guest on Thursday, talking about Ryan's book review this week, which go hand in hand together. Last topic I want to talk about is something that Jim Hacking posted recently on social media, and it was his article. I think it was from Forbes or maybe from Business Week about how Amazon has gotten into the legal space in that they are providing one-click sort of legal services in the trademark space for
Right.
people that advertise on their platform and sell through them. And the question was, is Amazon ready for the legal industry? And I wanted to get your thoughts on that because you've always thought about the future and where we're going. And I think it's inevitable that we're going to see some sort of Amazon intrusion into what it is that we do. Because, I mean, in the trademark space, I mean, it's very easy for them in that respect that it's standardized, it's federal, you can be in Kansas or California or in Maine and it's the same process, that type of thing. But I'm curious to see your input. Did you get a chance to read that article?
You know, I actually, it's good. Glad I actually read it. Yes, I did read it. Fascinating. It makes sense what they're doing it for because it goes hand in hand with the sale on their product. So it's not like it's not like they're saying, "Hey, put in your state, your location, your breath, refusal or not," and then you have 5 people for DUIs. That could easily be there in the future. Don't see that happening today or tomorrow, but like as you say it, anything that can be commoditized, they will move towards. And it's a marketplace, right? Because there's a certain amount of stuff that they sell, and then there are all these third-party market people. It wouldn't take a heck of a lot for people to be in there. Plus, you got the reviews in there. It easily, if they wish to pivot into it, as Bezos said, his margin is their opportunity, right? Was that Bezos
Yeah,
who said that? So I no doubt that it is a potential future threat. The people that have come so far in that space, looking at the legal Zooms, have stayed out of most of our B2C space, but it's dancing around the edges. And I think that if you bury your head in the sands, it's definitely they are moving in that direction. I think that Google hadn't touched law until LSAs, meaning they had their pay-per-click ads, but they had not moved that step further. It's definitely it's a messier space, and Amazon makes so much money. They may say, "Hey, this isn't worth it compared to other areas," but I could easily see an expansion in those commoditized trademark type worlds, maybe even pro forma wills, the stuff that you've seen. I think their first easiest move will be what we've seen with LegalZoom, where there's a need for people who are unrepresented at lower dollars, almost like the Costco approach, where they've taken a lot of different things that are out there and just made it a platform. Because if it's already being done on LegalZoom, and you already have prepaid legal and all these different services that are rolling things out, that those areas would be the easiest for them to move into first.
Right. One of the things that's interesting to me about this whole thing was the mindset that they talked a little bit about, how it's not necessarily task first, but customer first. And I think that's something that a lot of lawyers need to start thinking about. Talk to people and maybe even have somebody shop you and say, listen, I'm going to hire you, not necessarily, but I want you to go through and document how we handled your case, right? From start to finish, the touch points, how you felt, that type of thing, and really sort of get into the mindset of the consumer so that you can, focus group it or whatever, because I think that's going to be, the touch points and the way people are talking to the clientele and how you make the clientele feel, I think is going to be the difference maker between your firm and another firm going down the line.
Couldn't agree more. We're doing more and more surveying of people throughout the case. I think the Briars out in Arizona have done a wonderful job of creating that sort of culture within the firm, and it's something that we are pushing hard on. Like there are days when you feel like you have the law down and even the business down, but is the culture down and how you are making your clients feel along the way. And it is something that I have found, just like many law firms have had struggled with getting employees to push for reviews. really, really tough, right? Some people do economic incentives. I personally have struggled with this. I've had to bring additional help in to make that happen. I think the next step, which I am debating and want to get your thoughts on, is whether or not there are scripted. Now, you don't have to use the exact words, but at each interaction during a case, let's take the plaintiff side for a second, for a pre-lit case, from the time it's signed up, in each of these different threshold moments, that there is some sort of tracking language. Again, I wish it was natural and everybody did it. And look, many of the clients love our staff, but is it in addition to the natural serendipity of that esprit de corps, would it be helpful to have certain language to track it? I'm there to give you 5-star service. Is there anything else I could do? Just like when you're in a restaurant, in a nice restaurant, or even a medium restaurant, and the manager comes walking through the tables, how is everything? I think that not only do you find out if there's a problem, but I think that if you want to be a happy person, it will reinforce that. And people generally want to be happy. Now, if there is an issue, you want to know about it. And there's some people that are picky that are never going to be happy. But the idea that you're asking that question, how is everything going? Is there anything more we could do? If they say, no, you're doing great, it buys some positivity in that bigger relationship, and something that I'm working towards systematizing, making it Jay-like, rather than just hoping that it happens with our better staff, and knowing that some of our, let's say if you're lining up our staff and you have a best and you have a worst, what's happening with that worst person? Can you give them certain sort of automatic language at certain points in the case to help facilitate that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you go back to even some of the fundamentals of being a waiter, it's can I get you an appetizer to go with your meal? That type of thing. And you could do the same thing with, hey, I want to give you 5-star service, so at the end of this, you're giving me a 5-star review. And if you start saying that early on, they're going to get into their mind that I'm going to be giving you a 5-star review at the end of this thing. When you ask for the review, it's not coming out of the blue. And that's, there's a reason why, Belfort's company had that whole big book of objection responses that were scripted, because those were the ones that worked. And psychology is written into those, into that conversation. And you stick with what works, and you work the system, and it works for you. And it gives you that opportunity. Like, a really good waiter will say, how is everything? And that way, if something is like, you know what, this wasn't quite right, and you can go and fix it, then all of a sudden it takes what would have been a 3-star meal and turns into a 5-star meal, in the sense that, like, this is way too salty. Let me go get you another one. Like, that's what you want. Now, again, there's a cost to it. It's time, and it could be money, because you're going to cook another dish because it wasn't right. But if you care about getting it right, that's going to, make a big difference. Absolutely. Okay. So now let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla in the room, because Thursday we have something that's very big for a lot of people. It's big for me. I know it's big for you. And that is who our guest is on Thursday. So, Seth, you made this happen, so why don't you tell everybody who our guest is on Thursday?
Michael Gerber, who wrote The E-Myth and has written a series of books, E-Myth Revisited, etc. He's sort of one of those people that, I always said, like, oh, why don't we just slice the bread when it comes to how to run a small business, or how to run a business? And the idea that many of us came into the business world saying, hey, we're going to do everything. And this was the first guy who raised his hand in a very clear, concise way and said, no, these are the different stages of your entrepreneurial journey. And as you start to embrace that, you can get yourself to the point where you actually are working on your business, not in your business. So, again, to hear it from the horse's mouth, so many of us have sort of worked on that journey, and it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back often. But knowing that there is a path, can't wait to hear him sort of not just, we know and we've read his prose, but what I'm excited to find out is, as he's traveled the country and spoken to people in different sectors and heard objections, what are some of the things he's picked up on over the years about how people have gone about implementing what he has written about?
Yeah, I think it's also kind of interesting, and this is something that I want to talk to him a little bit about, is that for lawyers, right? I mean, there is something about being a lawyer that I think, at least I want to think, is a little different than other professions, in that it is somewhat who you are as a core. You're an advocate for people. You fight for people. You fight, and it's an intellectual challenge, that type of thing. And so, one of the things that is a challenge for you and I mean, both of us have partners who really want nothing to do with the business because they love being lawyers. My father, David, right? They love being lawyers. They're happy to have us do all this junk so that they can just, be who they want to be. And you've yelled at me for still maintaining a caseload, right?
Well,
and
not just a caseload, but at times a very heavy caseload.
Right. But there's part of me that likes doing that work. And so it's interesting because I could probably, if I wanted to, December, it's the second week of December now, I could probably get myself and extricate myself entirely out of my practice by the 1st of January. But there's a pull to help people and help my clientele that I like doing it. I want to keep doing that. So it's a delicate balance that you have to wonder about.
Well, there's also keeping your hand in it, one thing, and you had some business reasons for doing it. As you were building your firm, you had a big referral practice that came from being seen in court. Get it. You had a business imperative for doing it, as long as you're acknowledging that is preventing you from moving along that spectrum that Michael's going to talk to us about. Because, it's like, you're just not maximizing what you could be doing. The reason I've enjoyed this journey so much with you over the last decade plus has been that the ideas that come out in the implementation, the question is, we have finite resources as far as time, and where is that time best spent? And again, if you enjoy it, God bless. But I also know that you enjoy tinkering with and fixing and building and breaking, and that piece that has taken your firm to heights that other people in your vertical have not gotten to. And so it's a trade-off.
Yeah, it really is. It's funny. I spent some time this weekend building out a system for something that is now using VAs, doing Freedom of Information Act requests to help with the marketing team, using case mail to send out. And, I was loving it. Really, I should just walk away from everything else and just build systems for lawyers, because that is where I can get creative and cheap and find ways to do things for next to nothing, which I love doing. And that's really my thing. But what I want to do now is take a break. And let's turn it over to Ryan. And Ryan's book review this week, importantly, is going to be Michael Gerber's E-Myth. Because I think for those who haven't read it or haven't read it in years, it'll be great to sort of recap it prior to our interview this coming Thursday. So if it's good with you, Seth, let's take a few short minute break right now. We'll throw to our sponsors. We'll talk a little bit about their products. And then when we come back, we'll have Ryan McKean with his review of his Just Book It review of the E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and then we'll come back after that and wrap up the show. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Folks, we'll be right back with Ryan McKean and his review of the E-Myth.
In this world today, if you want to grow your business, you want to grow your firm, you want to take on more cases and make a bigger impact, you have to have a digital blueprint. Statistically, throughout the time that we've been working with Blue Shark Digital, our law firm, the Atlanta Divorce Law Group, grew over 1,400%. They truly understand where we're headed and how we want to get there. I have a team in Blue Shark Digital that I feel like has my back.
Hi, it's Ryan McKean, and I'm here with this week's episode of Just Book It, On this week's episode, I'm going to be discussing The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. The E-Myth is a book that I read on an annual basis. I revisit the ideas that are in the book because I think it is that fundamental. If I was teaching Business 101, E-Myth is the book that I would have in my syllabus. It would be one that would be taught. I think it is a very, very important book, and I think it's especially important for lawyers. And Gerber lays out what the E-Myth is, and the E-Myth is essentially that small businesses are started by entrepreneurs who are sacrificing capital in exchange for making a profit. And that's simply not true. Most small businesses, including small law firms, are started by technicians. Your local restaurant is started by a chef. Your local pie making shop or bakery is started by a baker. Your local law firm is started by a lawyer. And they are started because maybe the lawyer is very good at certain aspects of law. Maybe the chef is amazing at making steaks, and they go out and they start a business looking to make steaks, and they quickly find themselves trapped because, say, in Gerber's book, he uses the example of Sarah the pie maker. Sarah's a fantastic pie maker. People love her pies, and if you have a good product, you are going to keep growing and growing and growing in terms of demand for your product. But if you are, trying to make the pies, run the books, set up the cash register, run an ad on Facebook and do all the things that a small business person does, you're quickly going to get overwhelmed if you're trying to fulfill all those roles. So the technician quickly finds him or herself in a predicament. They suddenly realize that they don't in fact have a business. What they are is they are self-employed. And what Gerber talks about is taking, transitioning out from that self-employment into running a business. And in doing so, Gerber really dissects three different roles that exist in any sort of business. You have your technician. Your technician is the person who's doing the work. Nothing gets done in a business without a good technician. If you are making pies, you need a pie maker. It's pretty simple. Also, the second role in a business is a manager. You need somebody to order the supplies, to make sure that revenue goals are being met, to make sure that clients are satisfied. And you need the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur is someone who can set the vision for the business, someone who can think big picture, look to open a new location, to try new kinds of pies, and really sort of push the envelope and encourage. But these are not all just one person, yet many people in the service industry, including lawyers, find themselves trying to fulfill all these roles. And what Gerber suggests in the book is really that entrepreneurs, if they're going to have businesses, really need to adopt a franchise model. And he spends a lot of time talking about Ray Kroc and McDonald's and how Ray Kroc didn't invent the hamburger, but he invented the systems and marketing to sell hamburgers and to sell lots and lots of hamburgers. And Gerber works through what are 7 steps. One is you need to have a vision for your business. Do you want to be a national chain? Do you want to be the best firm in your town? Do you want to be the best firm in your state? Do you want to be a firm of 50 lawyers? Do you want to be a firm of 1 lawyer? You need to have your vision to start building out where it is that you want to go. You need to have some sort of strategic objective, which is really just how you're going to achieve that vision. You need to have an organizational strategy. So all businesses, should have some sort of organizational chart. Even when you're first starting out, you're, the chief financial officer, you're the chief marketing officer, you're the chief operating officer, you are the technician, you are the bookkeeper perhaps. So you need to do some sort of org chart to see what your business needs and then begin staffing that org chart accordingly. You're going to need management of those ideas. You need somebody who is really the implementer, who is going through and making sure that the trains in any one of your businesses are running on time. You need people. You need to have the right people in the right seats, and you need to be able to hold them accountable through things like handbooks and systems, so that the process can be repeated. Even when you lose employees, you have that process in place, that people process. You need your marketing to run with all of this. It needs to fit in. Gerber talks about a symphony, and you need systems to support all the growth. And Gerber talks a lot about in the book about how the entrepreneur never really escapes this. This is an ongoing process. It is not a destination. So I don't care where you are in your business. The E-Myth can offer you some insight into what it is that you need to do, what problems that you're having on sort of a big scale. I say it is, entrepreneurialism 101, and sometimes no matter what level you're at, it's great to get back to the basics, and the E-Myth has stood the test of time. So if you haven't read it, read it. If you read it a few years ago, reread it. I'm sure you're going to get more things out of it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay Ruane, one of the founders of FirmFlex and a practicing attorney for over 20 years. Anyone who knows me knows how my firm runs on the systems we create, and it has allowed us to flourish, even in tough times. I spent years and hundreds of thousands of dollars until I finally figured out a way to engage my audience and drive top-of-mind awareness with social media. And what did I do once I figured it all out? I built a system for it, and now you can put that system to work for you. You see, we took the hard part, creating the content and finding the images, and made it foolproof. Every day you will have curated social media topics to post designed to make your firm constantly remind your audience about your firm, what you do, and how you can help. And the best part? You don't even need to hire a dedicated social media person to do this for you. In fact, you don't even need to hire anyone new. We designed the system to make it easy for you to delegate to your receptionist, assistant, or paralegal and have them execute solid social media for you in just 5 minutes a day. It's like having a content writer, researcher, and graphics designer at a fraction of the price it would cost to hire in-house. Sign up today for the Social Super System and start building your brand where your clients already are, on social media. Well, there it is, Seth. A phenomenal, teed-up version of Michael Gerber's E-Myth in preparation for Thursday's big show, our big review, our big chance to sort of sit down with the man, the myth, the legend, who has influenced so many people in our community. And I'm really excited for what's coming up this week. How about you?
It should be great. So, this is one of those guys we talk about, we reference him, and now he'll be here.
It's funny. I remember reading the book for the very first time. I remember posting on social media. It must have been 12 or 13 years ago, maybe longer. I'm not quite sure, that I was going to take a year off of trial work as a DUI lawyer. I said, I sat down with my partner and I said, I'm not going to do trials for a year. He's going to do all the trials, and I'm going to just focus on the business. I'll do the daily morning court appearances and get continuances and move the files as best I can. But I'm not going to have to think about trials for 12 months, and this is going to allow me to focus on the business. And I really did. I mean, any spare moment I had, I was working on the business. I can remember I was single at the time, so got to be more than 12 years ago now. It's got to be 15, 16 years ago. I would leave work. I would stop by a bookstore on my way home. I'd look to see if there are any new business books out there, read them voraciously, try to apply the principles, reading all the business magazines I could get my hands on, and just put into place the systems and the ideas that I was seeing to allow me to sort of make this business what it has become today. And it's been phenomenal. What are your thoughts?
No, it's funny you say that. I remember the same memories of going to Barnes and Nobles and going through the business section and, grabbing E-Myth and other books and then going over to the digital marketing thing, and anything with the word SEO on it, I would grab. At the time, there weren't that many. And if there was a new one, you'd grab it and it would be done by the morning. And so this guy, I was part of a group called YEO that's now EO. And he was one of those speakers that came in and just captivated me, the way he went through, and it just sounded so he was able to crystallize something which has been a driving force, and not something I was able to do for many years. It took me a while before I was able to move in that direction. Did a lot of stuff in sort of real estate, buying and renovating apartment buildings, things like that. I found it very hard to do that. And part of the reason I got out of the real estate game was that I was not able to E-Myth. I was too much the guy doing the work, and I not building the stuff, but like I couldn't get out and work on my business. And part of what I've enjoyed about the law firm and the marketing ride has been that I've been pretty disciplined and pushed in that direction. So can't wait to hear from the man himself.
Awesome. All right, so folks, that's it. Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific, Seth and I will be interviewing Michael Gerber, the author. And if you have listened to any of our prior weeks, this is a week you do not want to miss. So for today, I am Jay Ruane, CEO of FirmFlex, and he is Seth Price, managing partner of Price Benowitz and CEO of Blue Shark Digital. And we are inviting you to join us this coming Thursday for a phenomenal, what should be a legendary show. I can't give it more props. Of course, you'll be able to find it on our podcast edition later, but you want to be live with us so you can ask questions on the feed as it comes in. Be sure to tune in on Thursday. And with that, we're going to leave you. I am Jay Ruane. He is Seth Price. I got my point right this week, Seth. I got it right. And these are the type of things that I worry about at night. I wake up in cold sweats that I'm going to point the wrong way and not point at Seth when I go like this. I'll wind up pointing this way, and I'll be pointing off to the screen, and no one will know what I mean. But that's it for me. I'm babbling now. Have a great week. We'll see you in 48 hours. Folks, can't wait to bring this show to you. It's going to be legendary. So with that, bye for now. Have a great day, and we'll see you on 2 days on Thursday.